Welcome, traveler of time. It's time to let your day go. Let your shoulders soften. Let the world outside your window blur and fall away. You are safe now, and you are welcome here. Take a slow breath in through your nose, and exhale softly, like wind moving through old lace curtains. In this moment, there is no rush, no expectations, just warmth and wonder. Let yourself melt deeper into your pillow. Let your arms grow heavy. Let your thoughts float as light as candle smoke. You're not just getting sleepy. You're drifting back to a world of cold stone towers, candlelit mirrors, and whispered secrets behind silk screens. Because our story tonight begins with a question, one that might tickle your curiosity as you drift toward dreams. What did beauty look like during royalty in medieval times? Not fairy tale beauty, not modern glamour, but real, raw, strange attempts at being beautiful in a world ruled by superstition, status, and survival. Because medieval royalty, yes, even queens and noble ladies, faced the pressure of appearance, just like we do now. Only their methods, they were awful, and fascinating. And in their own way, beautiful. So tonight, we'll explore the real routines of beauty in medieval times. The herbs and potions, the creams and charms, the burning coals, and bloodlet, all done in pursuit of an ideal they couldn't quite reach. This is boring history for sleep, and we're here to tell the truth, softly. Let your breath fall into rhythm with my words, and let the story begin. Our journey sets sail in the royal courts of the 13th century. Imagine it, a towering stone castle, cloaked in ivy, the sky outside heavy with fog. Inside, a noble woman leans toward a polished mirror of bronze. Her name might be Isabeau, or Cecily, or Anne. She is a daughter of wealth, a wife of influence, a lady expected to embody grace, cleanliness, and control. But there's a problem. The ideals of beauty in medieval royalty were not kind. Pale skin, high, exposed foreheads, no eyebrows, no body hair, small, pursed lips, a frail, near sickly look that suggested purity and virtue. To be beautiful, a woman had to appear untouched by the sun, untouched by labor, untouched even by appetite. And so, the beauty rituals began. Let's begin with the skin. Pale skin was everything. To look tan was to appear common, a peasant, one who worked under the sun, one who toiled. But royalty, medieval kings and queens, had to look untouched. So women would go to strange, painful lengths to lighten their faces. Some ground chalk into powder, mixed it with lead. Yes, lead, and applied it like paint. Others used vinegar-soaked cloths, worn overnight, or bathed in mixtures of mercury and crushed pearls. Still, others bled themselves. Just a few drops, they said, to drain the color from the cheeks. Imagine it, the smell of vinegar, the sting of lemon juice on soft skin, the cold, sharp press of bone tools used to scrape and pluck. It wasn't relaxing, but it was expected. And as the candlelight flickered on those ancient mirrors, a woman might ask herself, will they find me beautiful now? Let's pause here. Take a deep breath in and let it go. You're not in a medieval chamber. You're here, warm and still, in the softness of your own bed. But isn't it strange how far people will go just to be seen? Now, we turn to the eyes. Eyes were meant to be downcast, but striking. Not too wide, not too alive. So women would darken the lashes and lids, not with mascara, but with crushed antimony, soot, or burnt clove. It stung. It wasn't safe, but it gave the illusion of shadow, of mystery. And then came the eyebrows, or rather, the lack of them. In many noble courts, especially in 14th century France and England, it became fashionable to remove the eyebrows entirely. And not just that, to pluck the hairline so high, the forehead seemed to stretch halfway back over the skull. Why? because a high forehead was seen as a sign of intelligence, nobility, and even divine favor. So women sat patiently, or not, as their maids plucked each hair, one by one by one, until the face resembled the portraits you've surely seen. Round, ghostly pale, eyebrows absent, hairline pushed impossibly high. It may seem odd now, but to them, this was elegance. And once again, beneath all the discomfort was a deeper truth. To look this way meant you were above others, above pain, above nature, above earthly things. That was the illusion of medieval royalty. Even the skin was political, and it didn't stop there. Now, let's drift downward to the lips. Small, soft, subtle. That was the goal. Women avoided bold colors. Red lips were seen as impure, even sinful. Instead, they used crushed rose petals, soaked in animal fat, or rubbed fresh butter on their mouths to make them glisten faintly in torchlight butter. Sitting in a court chamber, discussing royal alliances or dynastic marriages, with soft butter quietly warming on your lips, and then the scent of lavender powder dusted over everything, not because it was sweet, but to mask the harsher smells of the body, because bathing was rare. But beauty had to appear effortless, even if it took hours to fake. Let your mind walk quietly through that world now. You're walking down a corridor lined with tapestries. The wind outside rustles the stained glass. Somewhere, a lute plays softly, and behind a silk-draped screen, a noble woman prepares her face for another day of being watched. Now, breathe again. Let the air fill your chest and drift out slowly, like the sigh of a forgotten queen. Welcome back, gentle soul. You've already walked the stone corridors of royalty in medieval times. You've peered into the quiet mirrors of medieval queens. And now, with your breath soft and steady, we drift farther into this strange scent, the textures, and the soft, crumbling powders of medieval beauty. Tonight's story remains a truth softly told. This is, after all, boring history for sleep, and you are right where you need to be. Take a breath with me. Let your chest rise, and exhale gently, like the wind brushing through velvet drapes. Now imagine yourself walking through a royal chamber. The air smells like crushed herbs and melted tallow candles. Somewhere nearby, a maid grinds dried petals into powder, and a small vial clinks gently on a carved wooden table. This is beauty in the world of medieval royalty. Let's begin with scent. Perfume, as we know it today, didn't exist in quite the same way. But make no mistake, smell was everything, not just for attraction, but for protection. Because during royalty in medieval times, it was believed that bad smells carried disease, that foul air meant a foul spirit, and to guard against it, women of the court wore scent-like armor. They called them tiny metal orbs, often shaped like fruits or flowers. Inside were tightly packed blends of cloves, cinnamon, myrrh, dried rose petals. These were clipped to the belt, or tucked inside silk sleeves, or worn on chains around the neck, close to the heart, not just for sweetness, but for safety. And so the noble woman walked, wrapped in fragrant halos of spice and florals, her body barely washed, her clothes reused and rescented with every wear. Bathing was rare, not because they didn't want to be clean, but because medieval kings and queens feared the very idea of bathing. Doctors warned that water opened the pores and opened the body to evil. And so, perfumes became a ritual, a daily rite. Some women even bathed in rose water when they could. Not to clean, but to refresh the soul. Now, take another breath and feel the soft, floral memory of those ancient oils brush across your skin. Let your imagination wander to the next detail. The teeth. White teeth were a status symbol, even in the Middle Ages. but sugar. Rare toothpaste. Not yet invented. So, what did medieval royalty do? Some rubbed crushed mint and salt across the gums. Others used a rag dipped in vinegar, wiping across the teeth in slow, patient circles. But others, and here is where things get awful, used a powder made from ground bone, burnt bread, or even powdered coral. These were harsh. They scratched the enamel, but they gave the illusion of brightness. A queen's smile mattered, even if it hurt. Now, imagine, you are in a quiet chamber. A lady in waiting leans in, gently wiping your teeth with a cloth. She hums a soft melody, perhaps an old lullaby passed down from her village days. You close your eyes and feel the sting of vinegar and the warmth of candlelight on your face. This was royal grooming. Let's float now into the realm of hair. Hair was complicated for both men and women in medieval courts. Hair was considered powerful, holy. Even a woman's hair, especially if it was long, golden, or curled, was a sign of virtue, of purity, of divine favor. But that beauty had to be hidden, especially if you were married. So queens wore veils, long nets, coiled braids, wrapped in gold threads, and elaborate headdresses shaped like crescent moons or butterfly wings. But beneath it all, the hair needed care, and they had recipes old, odd, herbal concoctions meant to strengthen and shine, egg whites and crushed barley, lavender steeped in goat's milk, rosemary boiled with rainwater. These were applied as masks, massaged in by hand, then rinsed out with well water that smelled faintly of earth and stone. Combs were carved from bone or wood. Hairpins were made from ivory or brass, and often mothers taught their daughters these rituals, not for vanity, but for survival in courtly life. Because in a world ruled by thrones and whispers, beauty was not just appearance, it was armor. Now breathe in again. Imagine the weight of those hairpieces, the quiet sound of water being poured into a wooden basin, the soft tug of a braid being twisted into place. You are drifting now, walking barefoot through a memory that isn't yours, but feels familiar. Because behind every cold painting of a medieval noble woman, there was once a girl who wondered how to be enough, how to be beautiful, how to survive. And now she lives here, in your imagination, in this warm, silent space between thought and sleep. So rest now, and know this. You've already stepped deeper than most ever will, into the powdered, perfumed, plucked world of medieval royalty. Would you like to wander even farther? Take another breath with me. In through the nose, out, like a sigh whispered to the stars. You're still floating in the quiet hush of royalty in medieval times, among whispered beauty secrets, lavender-laced towels, and half-lit mirrors. Let your body soften again, if it hasn't already. Let the muscles behind your eyes relax. Let your fingers and toes fall into stillness. You're safe, you're warm, and the world is melted into this moment. Now, we return to the quiet vanity tables of medieval royalty, where strange beauty ideas met soft superstition, and nighttime meant more than sleep. Because once the court had quieted, once the last torch was snuffed, the women of the castle had one final ritual. The night cream. Only it wasn't cream as we know it. In the 12th and 13th centuries, cream might mean a thick paste of lard mixed with beeswax, rose oil, and crushed herbs. Largesse. Animal fat was used as a base because it was soft, semi-solid, and to it, women added whatever was said to cool the skin. Violet petals, cucumber juice, powdered oyster shell, parsley water. They'd stir these mixtures with carved bone spoons and apply them gently to the face with linen cloths. It smelled odd, but they believed it would preserve the skin. Keep it pale, keep it young, and above all, keep it quiet, because quiet skin meant quiet virtue. Imagine you are in one of those beds. The fire crackles low. A maid brushes oil through your hair. Another gently dabs cool balm beneath your eyes with the edge of her sleeve. You feel almost loved. Almost. Because beauty, in the world of medieval kings and queens, was rarely about it was about survival. Let's drift now into one of the strangest ideas of all. For beauty, bloodletting. Yes, that's right. While most people associate bloodletting with medieval medicine, and rightly so, it was also recommended for aesthetic reasons. Too much blood was believed to cause redness, acne, and so some noblewomen pricked their skin just slightly, just enough to release what they believed was the excess. It sounds awful, and it was. Tiny silver handheld leeches, claws, soaked in salt, to close the pores afterward. But in the soft flicker of torchlight, as strange as it was, some believed it gave them that fragile, ghost-like glow, prized by royalty. Not rosy, not lively, but fragile. And somewhere in the quiet heart of that belief lay the idea that beauty was best when it looked almost breakable. Now, breathe again. Inhale through the nose. Hold for a heartbeat, and let it go, like fog rising from the moat at dawn. Let's turn now to another old idea. Pigeons. Yes, truly, in medieval beauty rituals, pigeons were believed to hold magical skincare properties. There are records, some faded, some half-suspected, that describe women boiling pigeons, straining the water, and adding the fat to their face balms. Some even made compresses out of the bones, laid across the cheeks at night, believed to draw out impurities. It wasn't cruelty in their eyes, but chemistry. The skin of royalty was precious, and any ingredient that promised softness was tried. A little odd. Yes, disturbing. But isn't it also tender in a strange way? This need to be beautiful, to be wanted, to be worthy of the gaze of a king or the blessing of a bishop, to be remembered in portraits and poems for a face that looked like velvet moonlight. Now, let's rest in that thought. You are not in a castle, but you can feel it, can't you? The weight of the linen canopy above the bed, the quiet shift of your silk sleeves, the soft hush of an old prayer being whispered down the corridor. You are floating, with every breath, deeper into the hush of boring history for sleep, where even the strangest stories come wrapped in soft light. Now, shall we drift further? There are still secrets to share, like the glowing powders of crushed pearls, the medieval D's for rosy cheeks, made with rabbit blood, and the infamous green foundation made from copper oxide. Take a breath with me now. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Let the day grow distant. You are safe, in a story, in a world wrapped in silk and secrets. And we are still nestled within the world of royalty and medieval times, where beauty was both a burden and a badge of honor. Where medieval royalty, kings, queens, noble ladies, performed their daily transformations, not for delight, but for duty. And even now, as you drift beneath blankets and breathe deeper into comfort, we return to a vanity table somewhere, in a royal keep where strange, glowing powders are about to be applied to a pale and pensive face. Let's begin with crushed pearls. Yes, real ones, ground into dust, so fine and white. It shimmered like snow. Pearl powder was a prized ingredient among the wealthiest noblewomen. It wasn't just a symbol of wealth. It was believed to purify the skin, to give a glow that was almost unearthly. Some mixed it with rose water. Others added it to their balms. Still others dusted it onto the cheeks, just before a banquet or courtly procession. And when candlelight struck the skin, it sparkled. But pearls were rare, and so alternatives were created. Chalk, bone ash, ground alabaster, white lead. Dangerous, but popular, and all of it for the same purpose. To appear ghostly, delicate, noble, to meet the expectations of medieval kings and queens who believed that beauty should never look too alive. And now, the cheeks. Rosy cheeks. like in fairy tales. Not quite. The ideal was to look flushed, yes, but faintly, like a winter flower pressed in a book. And so, women used strange tinctures. Some pricked their cheeks with tiny golden needles to bring color forward. Others rubbed them with the petals of red roses soaked in wine. But in darker moments, they used rabbit's blood. Yes, kept in tiny vials, applied gently with the tip of a feather or a piece of lace. The effect was temporary, but effective. And though it sounds gruesome, to them, it was just another tool in the ritual. Because in the silent game of appearances, every detail mattered. Now rest again. Let your mind drift back from the candlelit vanity, back through the arches of the palace, back into your warm, still body here and now. You are far from the cold, powdered world of medieval court, and yet you carry its memory softly. Let's move now to one of the strangest chapters of the story. The green face. Yes, green. You see, copper was once believed to have healing and beautifying powers. In small doses, ground copper oxide was added to creams and masks. Mixed with vinegar or wine, it formed a greenish paste. This green mask was worn at night, sometimes for hours, believed to draw out blemishes, heal spots, and leave the skin smooth. It smelled metallic. It stung the eyes, but in the name of beauty, it was endured. And when the mask was removed in the morning, it was said that the skin glowed with new light. Strange, yes, but imagine now, you reclining in a high-backed wooden chair, a mask of crushed herbs and copper drying slowly on your cheeks, the fire crackling at your feet, a maid humming a prayer in a forgotten tongue, and overhead, the sound of a bell ringing softly through the corridor, marking the midnight hour. Let your thoughts drift and breathe again. This is still boring history for sleep, but it's full of quiet magic, isn't it? Because behind the strangeness, there is softness. Every strange cream, every dangerous powder, every ritual that makes us blink in disbelief today was, for them, a way to be worthy, to be seen, to stay safe in a world that watched them far too closely. Now, let your body settle once more. Feel the cool linen of the bed, the weight of your own breath, slowing, softening. And imagine one more ritual. A noble woman, her face cleansed and dried, kneels before her mirror. She says nothing. She simply stares at herself, her reflection ghosted in the dim bronze. Then she closes her eyes. She sleeps, and the next day, it begins again. Would you like to drift even deeper? To hear how medieval royalty handled body odor? What deodorants looked like in the 14th century? And why noble women filled their shoes with crushed flowers? Let's breathe again. Together. Inhale. And let it drift out like incense from a chapel window. You're still resting inside the quiet glow of royalty in medieval times, where noble halls echo with perfume, powder, and pressure. A time when beauty was defined not just by desire, but by ritual, rank, and survival. And tonight, we explore something even more personal than powders. Something we all think about, but never quite associate with medieval royalty. Scent, or more precisely, body odor. You see, in the world of medieval kings and queens, smell was not just aesthetic. It was spiritual. They believed the body's aroma reflected the soul's purity. A saint was sweet. A sinner, not so much. And yet daily bathing, as we now know it, was rare. In fact, many nobles believed bathing too often was dangerous. Doctors warned hot water could open the pores, that evil spirits might enter through damp skin. And so, they didn't wash, not entirely. Instead, they masked. Let's step softly now into a royal dressing room. It's dawn. A noble woman stands with her arms lifted. Two maids prepare her for the day, but they don't reach for soap and water. Instead, They reach for a cloth soaked in rose water and vinegar. They dab gently behind the ears, at the neck, under the arms, between the toes. The cloth smells of crushed mint and spoiled wine, but it's the cleanest scent available. Then they dust her skin with fine powders made of crushed bay leaves, ground clay, dried jasmine, and, if she's wealthy, powdered pearls. Again, all of this to prevent odor, to preserve the illusion of cleanliness. And finally, she slips on her gown. But before her shoes go on, one more ritual. Crushed flowers inside the shoes. Yes, sachets of petals and herbs were tucked into the soles. Not for softness, no. The shoes were stiff, but for scent, so that every step left behind a trail of lilies, or lavender, or myrrh. Now, take a step with her, in your mind. Feel the rough leather against your heel. Hear the soft whisper of fabric across stone. And know this, even as she walks with poise and painted face, she worries. Can they smell me? Because in the courts of medieval royalty, a woman's worth could be ruined by one poorly timed whiff. Let's pause here. Inhale again, and exhale. Slow and soft. Now let's drift deeper. 2 royal perfumes. Unlike today's floral spritzes, perfumes then were oils. Heavy, earthy, intense. The most beloved scents: frankincense and myrrh, damask, rose-smoked, sandalwood, dried orange peel, soaked in oil, cedar resin. Perfume bottles were often pendants worn over the heart, tiny glass or silver phials, gently uncorked throughout the day to refresh one's presence. But here's the odd part. They didn't spray them on their skin. No, that was considered too sensual. Instead, they perfumed their linens, their gloves, their writing paper, even their hair. Combs soaked in scented oils were passed through dry strands, leaving the aroma to linger for days. And so, even a letter from a duchess might arrive smelling of thyme and roses. Imagine now, you are seated at a carved desk. You open a scroll, and the scent of your lover wrapped in rose water and wax rises to meet you. This, too, was beauty. Let's float now into the quietest detail. How a royal bedroom was scented for sleep. Not every castle smelled of fire and rot. In the more refined courts, it was custom to fumigate the bedchamber nightly. Oh, with herbs placed on hot stones, steam rising through the room. Often sage, chamomile, birch bark, crushed lavender leaves mixed with smoke. It was said to purify the air and calm the dreams. Sometimes dried oranges, stuffed with cloves, were hung above the bed, spinning gently in the candle breeze. And beneath the pillows, little scent of calming petals to soothe the skin and the soul. So tonight, as you lie in your own bed, imagine it. The soft smoke rising from sage-stuffed coals, the cool linen pressing gently to your cheek, the faint trace of lavender in your hair, and the quiet thought that even centuries ago, someone else was lying still, trying to fall asleep, and hoping the world would be kind to them when they woke. This is the hush of boring history for sleep, and you are a part of it now. Would you like to go even deeper? There is more to tell. Of honey-based lip stains, dangerous mercury masks, and the way queens darkened their veins with crushed berries to look nobly pale. Take a slow breath in, hold it softly, and let it drift away like a feather on the air. You're still nestled in the secret world of royalty in medieval times, drifting alongside powdered noble women, perfumed queens, and the quiet rituals of medieval royalty. And now, let's return to the vanity, where lips were touched, not with gloss, but with honey, golden, fragrant. Yes, honey, sticky, used not only for healing, precious and rare, but to bring a subtle shine to the mouth, sometimes tinted with crushed strawberries, beetroot, or even a trace of cochineal and insect pigment. The honey's soft and cracked lips gave them a subtle sweetness, and glistened beneath torchlight. About Mercury. It was simple, once thought to be magical. It was quiet, but it was not always safe, because deeper in the shadows, desperate to look perfect in candlelight, lay darker practices. Smooth the skin. Let's whisper now. Mercury was believed to heal scars and erase blemishes caused by pox or sun. So, some noble women mixed mercury with vinegar or egg whites and spread it across their faces like a mask. They wore it to sleep. Yes, thinned. Sometimes for hours, they were becoming beautiful. It burned. It stung. But they believed it was working. Breathed softly. Shadowed. They believed. They wore it. And over time, the skin grew pale. Beauty in the eyes of medieval kings, but deeply revealing, was considered noble queens but also bruised. The eyes, the hair, and still, because was worth the pain. Now, let your thoughts hold no judgment, just curiosity, because even now, don't we all chase beauty in quiet, curious ways? Let's drift again into something almost poetic, a trend forgotten by time. In some courts, especially in Italy and southern France, it to have visible blue veins on the chest and arms. Why? Because it symbolized purity, transparency, and noble blood. And so, some noble women would use crushed berries or tinted powders to paint blue lines along their necks and subtle, just beneath the powder, barely visible. But there, like rivers beneath snow, it was delicate, tragic, strangely beautiful. Now imagine a princess seated beneath a stained glass window, a maid with a feather brush tracing soft lines across her ivory skin, cool pigment blooming like whispers of a map. This was considered elegance, to look fragile, to look like porcelain, to embody both strength and stillness. And all of it done before breakfast. Now rest again. Let the sounds grow soft around you. The brush of lace, the hush of velvet, the quiet promise of another morning in the life of medieval royalty. Let's not forget the brows. In some courts, the ideal was no eyebrows at all. Yes, a bare, high forehead was the fashion. It made the face look longer, more divine. So what did they do? They plucked, shaved, and sometimes singed. The heated needle or a candle flame was passed over the brow bone, burning the hairs away. And the smell, it was unpleasant, but common. And afterward, powder was pressed into the skin, white, soft, and cool, to soothe the sting and mask the redness. Beauty, always, through effort. And now, you resting beneath soft sheets, imagining a time not your own. Let yourself feel how strange, how human these routines were. Not magical, not glamorous, just attempts to be seen, to be chosen, to be remembered. That's what boring history for sleep shows us. That every strange custom was a message, a sigh in the dark, a hand reaching for meaning. There is still more to discover. The painful high heels of medieval queens. Why some women painted their teeth black, and what royal beauty contests looked like in public feasts. Take a long, quiet breath, in through your nose, and out like the sigh of a gown slipping from a wooden hook. You're still deep inside the world of royalty in medieval times, where beauty was a performance, and every morning meant another role to play. Let's float now to something you might not expect. Shoes. Not dainty, not soft, but tall and heavy. Let me tell you about chopines. These weren't ordinary shoes. They were platforms, sometimes up to 18 inches tall, made of cork or wood, covered in velvet or brocade. They were worn by noble women to elevate their status, literally and symbolically. To walk in them was an art and a risk. Some had to be held by servants just across a hall. Each step was deliberate, measured, performed, but the message was clear. I am so high above. I don't need to move quickly. Now imagine a queen gliding slowly across a candlelit chamber, her steps echoing off stone. Her shoes creak softly beneath layers of silk, her head held still, her face powdered and unreadable. She is untouchable. She is performing beauty for a world that will judge her even as she sleeps. And yet, beneath the shoes, her feet are blistered, wrapped in linen, stuffed with dried petals and cloth for relief. Because beauty hurts, especially for medieval royalty. Now, another detail. Teeth. You might imagine white teeth were the ideal, but not always. In some cultures, especially in the East, and trickling into medieval Europe, blackened teeth were admired. Why? Because it was unnatural, unreachable. To blacken one's teeth showed status, a sign that you could afford rare herbs, exotic oils, and long, meticulous rituals. In some regions, women mixed iron filings and vinegar to darken the enamel deliberately. It was also believed to protect against decay, so the smile of a highborn lady might gleam like polished obsidian. It sounds eerie to us now, but then it was prestige. Because beauty was never about looking natural. It was about looking different, unattainable, otherworldly. Now, breathe again. Let your own body feel relaxed, natural, soft, because your beauty needs no powder, no platform shoes, no painted smile. But the women of medieval kings and queens did not have that freedom. They were judged every hour, with every step, every glance, every whisper. And that brings us to one of the most uncomfortable customs of all: royal feasts as beauty showcases at certain banquets, particularly weddings or seasonal festivals. Noble women were expected to present themselves not just for dining, but for comparison, seated in rows, poised and quiet, observed by guests, visiting dignitaries, and suitors who had the fairest face, the softest voice, the most graceful hands. It wasn't always spoken aloud, but everyone knew. And if the queen was not the most admired, she would hear about it in letters, in court, gossip, in poems left behind by envious rivals. Imagine now a hall filled with music, trays of gilded pears, candles weeping wax onto carved tables, and along the side wall, a line of royal women, silent, still, sore from their chapines, their veils heavy with perfume, smiling, because they had to, because beauty, for them, wasn't a joy. It was a crown with thorns. Now let your breath deepen. Let your eyelids grow heavy again. You are here, not in that banquet, not under those eyes, but here, safe, watching it all from a distance, and understanding with kindness. These weren't shallow women. They were surviving, performing, hoping, just like all of us. And if you're wondering how this ends, there's still one more part. The final layer, the long sleep beneath tapestries, the dreams of queens long forgotten. And what happened when beauty? You've walked quietly through the powdered halls of royalty in medieval times, where medieval kings and queens woke each day to the expectations of beauty, grace, and composure. We've explored strange rituals, unsettling powders, perfumed pain, and mirrored silence. But what happened when youth faded, when the queen's hair turned silver and her cheeks no longer flushed with powdered rose? Let's drift now into those quiet twilight years of medieval royalty. Unlike today, there were no skin serums, no soft focus lenses, no social pressure to age gracefully in the modern sense. But there was still judgment. Aging was seen as a loss of favor, a drift away from divine beauty, a sign that God, perhaps, was looking elsewhere. Now, older queens were often replaced in stories, or painted in darker tones by court poets and rivals. But the truth, many of them were freer. Yes, when the paints were set aside, and the veils worn just for warmth, not allure, a kind of peace set in. These women became matriarchs, advisors, guardians of memory. They no longer needed to stand at banquets like silent statues. They sat beside kings, or above them, quietly directing. And in this final phase, some beauty rituals remained. But they soft. Instead of whitening powders, elder queens favored herbal washes, soothing tonics made of elderflower, chamomile, oak bark, steeped in milk. These were rubbed gently over the skin with linen cloths, not for appearance, but for comfort. Their hair was no longer dyed, but braided with white ribbon, a symbol of wisdom and presence. They no longer painted blue veins on their arms. They traced real lines in old letters, remembering the girls they once were. And in private, some would still keep a single pearl in their jewelry box, a little vial of lavender oil, a comb passed down from mother to daughter, not to impress, but to remember. Now breathe, as if you, too, are brushing silver strands away from your brow. You are still, you are warm, you are wise, and this story is nearly done. But let's whisper one last piece, because there was one place where all these beauty rituals finally stopped, where queens removed their powders, where noble women were no longer dressed by others, where mirrors were draped in black. The convent. Many aging noble women, especially widowed queens, chose to retire to convents, not always from devotion, but from exhaustion. The beauty games ended there. No one watched their walk. No one painted their cheeks. No one asked them to smile for a feast. They tended gardens. They copied books. They prayed in silence. And some finally felt beautiful. Not because of how they looked, but because of how they felt. Whole, quiet, real. And as you lie here, breathing soft and slow, you can imagine one such woman now. A queen once known for her gowns, now wrapped in wool, her hands in the dirt, planting mint for the nuns, who will wash their faces before bed. The scent rises, gentle, clean, no powder, no pain, just peace. And now, as we reach the end of this long, drifting story, let these final thoughts settle softly around you. You've listened to a tale of powder and pearl, of ritual and reflection, of the pain beauty once demanded, and you've come through it with quiet understanding, because this has been more than just a strange story. It's been a mirror of how far we've come, and how deeply we've always wanted to be seen. Tonight, you've been seen. And you are beautiful, without your peens, without needing to whisper to the candlelight that you're enough. Because you are. Let this be the end of performance, and the beginning of rest. You've walked through the world of medieval kings and queens, and you've laid it gently down beside you. Now, dear dreamer, sleep softly, quietly, truly. The story is done, and so are you. For now, good night.